Mangwana ni mwalelepo vukenjani kwas vanave Africa. Welcome to Africa Good Morning on Monday the 16th of May as we continue to bring you all the pertinent stories on the African continent and beyond. I am Ashwin Berry.
And I am Glenn Rashipura.
Now we start off with some good news today for Namibia's film industry. Congratulations are indeed in order for Hairareb, which won the best movie in Southern Africa at the recently held Africa Magic Viewers' Choice Awards in Lagos, Nigeria. In Shona, we say Makorokoto. Congratulations.
I mean, we are excited. This is a win for all of us, actually.
Yes, indeed. The entire film industry,
yes,
without a doubt, and maybe at large.
Well, today is drawing day, and I know Ashwin Berry is
I'm okay. I draw good stickmen. Very perfect stickmen. Very symmetrical.
Well, yes, there you have it. Drawing day is there to remind us of the time when we're too tied up in the amazing and beautiful things that come out of our imagination and onto the page to be self-conscious about them. Let's take a look at this video on drawing day.
Today is Monday, the 16th of May, and these are your top stories. Slavery still exists in Mauritania. This is according to a UN envoy. A human rights expert has called on the authorities in Mauritania to take urgent measures to implement an anti-slavery law which was passed in 2015. Following a visit to the West African country, Tomoya Obokata, the UN Special Rapporteur on contemporary forms of slavery, said some progress had been made in abolishing the practice, but warned much more needed to be done. He said people were still being born into slavery and people affected by the practice needed help to seek justice and achieve equality. Mr. Obokata said people were now more willing to discuss the issue openly, but he said caste-based slavery and chattel slavery, where one person owns another, were still happening. He warned that a change in the mindset of the country's leaders was needed because even though laws have been passed, they were not being implemented. The Japanese scholar said enslaved people in Mauritania, particularly women and children, were subject to violence and sexual abuse.
In our next story, outcry as Israel police beat mourners at journalist funeral. The US and EU led an international outcry Saturday after Israeli police charged the funeral procession of Palestinian journalist Shireen Abu Akleh and beat pallbearers who almost dropped her coffin. Now, thousands of mourners packed Jerusalem's old city on Friday for the burial of the 51-year-old Al Jazeera journalist, 2 days after she was killed during an Israeli raid in the occupied West Bank. Now, television footage showed pallbearers struggling to stop Abu Akleh's casket from falling to the ground as baton-wielding police charged towards them, grabbing Palestinian flags. Now, the European Union condemned what it said was unnecessary force used by the Israeli police. Israel and the Palestinians traded blame after Abu Akleh was shot in the head on Wednesday near Jenin refugee camp in the northwestern bank. She had been wearing a helmet and a bulletproof vest marked press. Israel's army said an interim investigation could not be determined who fired the fatal bullet, noting stray Palestinian gunfire or Israeli sniper fire aimed at militants were both possible causes.
Truly saddening news indeed, and it doesn't get any better as a Nigerian student beaten and burned to death for blasphemous text messages. A female Nigerian student was beaten to death and set on fire by fellow students who accused her of posting blasphemous statements in a student WhatsApp group, two witnesses and police said. The school, located in Nigeria's northwesternmost state of Sokoto, was immediately closed down following the attack. 2 suspects were arrested in connection with the murder of the student, who was identified as Deborah Samuel, said a spokesperson for the Sokoto State Command. Reuters was not able to reach her family for comment. There is a WhatsApp group being used by the students, and her Muslim colleague student posted an Islamic piece. She criticized the posting, said one of the witnesses, who declined to be named. She composed an audio that contains blasphemous comments on the Prophet of Islam and posted in the group. That is what triggered everything. Nigeria is divided into a largely Christian south and mostly Muslim north. Students forcefully removed the victim from the security room where she was hidden by the school authorities, killed her and burnt the building, police spokesperson Sanusi Abubakar said in a statement. School security and police attempted to rescue the victim but were overwhelmed by the students, the witnesses said. Police have fired tear gas on the students, then began firing shots in the sky to disperse the students, but they resisted.
Moving over to our neighboring country, South Africa fears new surge driven by variants. South Africa is experiencing a surge of new COVID-19 cases driven by 2 Omicron subvariants, according to health experts. Now, the new increase in COVID cases is coming as the country enters the Southern Hemisphere's colder winter months, along with a rise in cases of flu. For about 3 weeks, the country has seen increasing numbers of new cases of COVID and somewhat higher hospitalizations, but not increases in severe cases and deaths. South Africa's new cases have gone from an average of 300 per day in early April to about 8,000 per day this week. South Africa's new surge is from 2 variations of Omicron BA.4 and BA.5, which appear to be very much like the original strain of Omicron that was first identified in South Africa and Botswana late last year and swept around the globe. Now, the new versions appear to be able to infect people who have immunity from earlier COVID infections and vaccinations, but they cause generally mild symptoms. In South Africa, 45% of adults are fully vaccinated, although about 85% of the population is thought to have some immunity based on exposure to the virus.
Do too many cooks spoil the broth? Well, Somalia is about to find out as 37 candidates battle it out in Somali president poll as 2 quit the race. 2 candidates who were vying for the presidential race in Somalia quit the race on Saturday, bringing the number of contenders to 37. The race had attracted 39 contenders, the largest number in Somalia's history. Abdi Karim Hussein Guled, a former interior minister and former president of Galmudug state, and Abdi Nasir Abdil Mohammed, a newcomer, announced on Saturday that they were quitting to support Abdi Shakur Abdirahman's candidacy. To win in the first round, a candidate must secure 2/3 of the vote, or 219 ballots. Observers expect a second or even third round of voting for the 4 top candidates. There are 39 registered presidential candidates, a list that includes incumbent Mohammed Abdullahi Mohammed, 2 former presidents, a former prime minister, several top officials, and even a journalist. The field includes 1 woman, Fauzia Yusuf Haji Adam, a lawmaker who once served as Somalia's foreign minister. Police in Somalia have announced a 33-hour curfew on the capital Mogadishu that will keep almost all residents at home during a presidential election by lawmakers on Sunday, in which incumbent leader Mohammed Abdullahi Mohammed is seeking a second term. Now, in Nigeria, 18.5 million children are out of school. We continue with our top stories after the break.
Thank you for staying with Africa. Good morning. In our next story, Nigeria has 18.5 million children out of school. More than 18.5 million children in Nigeria have no access to education, with girls accounting for more than half the number, the United Nations Children's Fund has said. This is a staggering surge in cases of out-of-school children in Africa's most populous country, which UNICEF put at 10.5 million last year. In Nigeria, there are 18.5 million out-of-school children. 60% of these are girls. Rahama Farah, the head of the UNICEF's office in the northern city of Kano, told local reporters. Now, he said attacks on schools across the north by jihadis and criminal gangs who kidnap for ransom had contributed to the increase. Since Boko Haram jihadis kidnapped more than 200 schoolgirls from the northeastern town of Chibok in 2014, dozens of schools have been targeted in similar mass abductions. Last year, gunmen abducted around 1,500 school children, with 16 students losing lives, UNICEF says. Now, most of the young hostages have been released after negotiations, but some are still in captivity in forest hideouts. More than 11,000 schools have closed in Nigeria due to insecurity since December 2020, UNICEF said last month.
Now, alleged senior leader of 1994 Rwandan genocide confirmed dead. Protais Mpiranya, one of the last remaining fugitives sought over the 1994 Rwandan genocide, has been confirmed dead, and the case against him has been closed. The prosecutor of the successor court to the UN Rwanda Tribunal said on Thursday. An international investigation concluded that Mpiranya died on October 5th in 2006 in Harare, the capital of Zimbabwe. He was alleged to have been a senior leader of the 1994 Rwandan genocide against the Tutsi population and was indicted by the International Criminal Tribunal for Rwanda in 2000. Piranya was charged with 8 counts of genocide, complicity in genocide, crimes against humanity, and war crimes. He was also deemed responsible for the murders of, among others, Rwandan Prime Minister Agathe Uwilingiyimana and 10 Belgian United Nations peacekeepers. There are now only 5 outstanding fugitives under the International Residual Mechanism for Criminal Tribunals jurisdiction. The IRMCT is still prosecuting the remaining cases in the Rwandan genocide.
In our next story, Burkina Faso, rescue teams reach 580 meters depth of zinc mine with 8 trapped miners. Now, search and rescue teams working in a zinc mine in Burkina Faso have been able to reach a depth of 580 meters where the mine's shelter room is located. The latest development comes as efforts to rescue 8 miners trapped for 27 days in a zinc mine some 100 kilometers from the capital, Ouagadougou, continued on Friday. Now, rescuers kept pumping out water from the Perkowa zinc mine, where the 8 miners have been trapped since April 16, according to the local media reports. Now, since the flood waters also damaged the electricity and communication systems in the mine, contact with the miners could not be established. We hope the colleagues were able to access it. There were 8 of them. We don't know if all 8 were able to get in, but we hope to find alive those who were able to get in. So we're working to pump the water out quickly enough to reach that level. Palenfo Musa, director of Nantao Mining, said more than 3 million liters of water have been pumped out between Thursday and Friday with electric pumps brought from Ghana and South Africa by the Canadian company Nantao Mining, which operates the mine. However, visibility remains an issue for the search and rescue team.
Swinging over to Mozambique, Assembly passes bill on money laundering. This is according to the AIM. The Mozambican Parliament, the Assembly of Republic, on Thursday unanimously approved a government bill to strengthen the legislation against money laundering and the financing of terrorism. Introducing the bill, Justice Minister Helena Kida said the preventive measures being introduced are intended to make it difficult to use the Mozambican financial system and other sectors of economic activity for criminal purposes. The bill, she said, also brings Mozambican legislation into line with United Nations conventions and resolutions. Kida stressed that Mozambique is suffering from terrorist attacks in the northern province of Cabo Delgado, which made it critical to strengthen the legal framework for combating the financing of terrorism. The bill will, for the first time, oblige churches, NGOs, and foundations to publish annual accounts in an attempt to prevent these bodies from being used for money laundering.
Moving over to South Africa, 5 of the 11 elephants that strayed into South Africa from Mozambique have been captured and relocated, said South African National Parks on Wednesday. Science Park said 11 elephants strayed into the country via Eswatini and were roaming the Madadeni area in Mapulang province. The Science Parks worked with Mapulang Tourism and Parks Agency using a helicopter, game capture tracks, loading ramps, and all the other necessary resources required to ensure a safe and successful game capture operation. This was a difficult and stressful operation, but we are happy at the turn of events and that the animals have been relocated to a safe area away from communities, said Kruger National Park Managing Executive Gareth Goldman. Now, the elephants have been released in Mozambique's Xingwedzi section, north of the Kruger National Park. We urge communities to alert officials when they observe animals outside the protected areas.
That brings us to the end of our top stories. After the break, we talk about disability in Namibia. Stay with Africa. Good morning.
Adam Tas is coming to Windhoek to help build a brighter future for education. Join us at the Sounds of Caring concert at Windhoek High School Vegkop on 20 and 21 May, where he will be performing with Von Arends and Rian Smith. Tickets cost $200 Namibian and are available via eticket.my.na. All proceeds go towards the African Child Development Trust.
Now, Angelique Philanda of the National Disability Council of Namibia talks to Yolanda now about the accessibility and inclusivity of disabled people in society and the workplace. Her colleague Maggie interprets. Have a look.
Well, in terms of disability, there are still barriers that persons with disability face in Namibia. And especially those barriers, we need to try to see how, with different interventions, we can mitigate it. For example, you spoke about inclusivity. Inclusivity in society is still a problem, especially in the workforce of Namibia. We still have a problem with inclusivity. Currently, it indicates that at least 5% of employees should be persons with disabilities at any institution or organization or any employer for that matter. But if you look in Namibia, that is not the case. In most cases, it's zero at all. So our affirmative action process act is not adhered to in terms of persons with disability.
Ms. Philanda, you have a colleague with you and she's interpreting our interview. Why did you decide that this is so important to include your colleague, especially with sign language?
Yes, because we in our disability community, we have persons with disability that is hearing impaired. So for them for this interview and for the information that we are giving through this interview to go out to them, we need to make sure that we give them the service that they need in order for them to understand what we are discussing here today.
I just quickly want to switch over to Maggie. Maggie, thank you so much for being here and thank you for interpreting as we talk. Can you quickly tell us from your point of view, how should people embrace sign language in their day-to-day life, especially in businesses as well?
Thank you for the opportunity, Ms. Nell. I think sign language is a language like other Namibian language, and each person, whether you are hearing or you are deaf, you should know how to communicate in sign language. Because in Namibia, we have different group of people, or even our tradition, we have different type of people that are coming from our houses. Some of them are our sisters, our brothers, they were born within our family. And so it's very important for each person from each household to know sign language. even the basic communication is important, because sometimes we can find a child that's been born from a hearing parents, and most of the time the parents cannot sign. And this child acquires sign language at the later stage, which is a problem. So for me, I feel like it's very important for all the community, even the government institution, to have either a sign language interpreter or to have a basic communication in sign language, because we never know what will happen to us. Because some of our colleagues in the deaf community, they were not born like that. Some of them, they were born hearing like me and you, then they acquired deafness due to accident that happened to them, due to the illness that happened to them. So it's very important for us to prepare before time the environment, because we don't know what will happen tomorrow. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Maggie. What does the statistics look like in Namibia? How many people are living with disabilities?
Well, that is exactly why we have now embarked on a project called the disaggregated data project, which is data that benefits all, because there are still a lot of gaps in terms of data, the situation of persons of disabilities in our communities, as well as the characteristics of persons of disability. And therefore, we have now embarked upon this project so that we collect the data, so that we have this data, and meaning in terms of disaggregated data, meaning we are breaking data. Normally, you have your normal statistical data, which is aggregated, it is summarized. So now we want to have data that is more broken down into smaller components, which when we use it will enable us to see different trends, different patterns, and also insights, reveal things that we haven't seen before. And that will then enable us to identify all the solutions. What are the challenges that people face, and what are the solutions that we need to put down in terms of breaking down those barriers that we set. And therefore we've embarked upon this to collect this data. We have summarized data of the population in terms of the National Statistics Agency collecting data, but we don't have data that goes gives indicators in terms of the barriers, the challenges that people are facing. How are we progressing in terms of integrating people into society? Inclusivity, we don't even have data about inclusivity of persons of disability in society. How far have we come since the time in 2007 that we rectified the UN Convention on Persons of Disabilities? We need to look at that progress that we've made, and then based on that, we can then craft better policies, evidence-based policies, make better decisions, and also craft better national development plans that is inclusive for persons with disabilities, looking at those challenges and coming up with the necessary developmental programs in order to mitigate these barriers.
This is Africa Good Morning, still bringing you the latest pertinent news stories. We now cross over to Zambia, speaking to Mike Sichula. Good morning, Mike.
Africa, good morning. I'm very well, thank you. How are you doing?
I'm doing well. Can you take us through your first story, please?
Yes, Zambia has recorded a mass reduction from 3.6 million metric tons last year, 2.7 metric tons this farming season. So the reason for this reduction has been attributed to poor rainfall in some maize-field belt where this province, they did have enough rainfall. In some areas, they had a lot of rainfall, that contributed to a drought because some of the maize was submerged. Then another reason is that the distribution of farming inputs was not done in the right way. It was delayed, and farmers did not have equipment to support their agricultural activities. However, during the same period, the production of soybeans has increased by at least 15.63%, from over 400 metric tons, 400,000 metric tons to 475,000 metric tons, which is the highest the country has ever produced.
All right. Now, moving on, the government of Zambia has clinched a deal to export chickens to the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia. Could you tell us about that?
Yes, this is one of the initiatives that the government has been able to contribute to support the diversification of the agricultural sector, and one of which is through this latest development where Zambia has clinched a deal to supply chickens to the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia. This situation has excited the Poultry Association of Zambia, that says the country currently produces 2.3 million day-old chicks per week, which is sufficient for export and local consumption. So it is highly expected that going forward, a number of farmers are going to get into the production of chicken, because there is a big market now in the Middle East, that is Saudi Arabia, and it is expected that during the next month, the officials from Saudi Arabia are going to come to Zambia to finally sign all the documentation that are required to start this process.
Now, I understand that the Fourth African Union Media Coordinating Meeting will be held in Zambia from the 14th to the 17th July. Can you tell us more about this?
Yes, this has been made possible actually from the past administration into the new administration. And that's what you can see there. That is the new Kenneth Kaunda International Conference Center, which is a project under using a grant from the Chinese government, and Zambia has not spent anything on it. The Chinese government provided a grant and a loan of 31 million United States dollars for the upgrading of the Mungushi International Conference Center to put up the Kenneth Kaunda International Conference Center in preparation for the hosting of the 2022 African Union Heads of State Summit. So this is something that the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and International Cooperation is saying is ready to host the event, and all the modalities that are required to host this big event are ongoing, and it is expected that the fourth African Union mid-year coordinating meeting will be a hive of activities for local and for local tourism, as well as other players in the hospitality industry, considering that a number of Africans are going to converge in Lusaka from the 14th to 17th July 2022.
All right, Mike. Now, 2012 Africa Cup gold medalist James Chamanga, 42, has been recalled to the national team by coach Aljosa Asanovic, who has named a 23-man squad comprising of local-based players for local camp. As briefly as you can, Mike, please get into that story.
Yes, James Chamanga is one of the players there in the picture who has been featuring even at his old age, 42. And if he's going to be given an opportunity to feature in a competitive match, he's going to become the first Zambian international at that age to compete internationally. He has been a very busy player. His side, led Arrows Football Club, won the Zambian Super League Championship. So he's been on high, and the coach has drafted him into the team to help mentor young players, especially strikers. So it is expected that he's going to play a huge role as Zambia continues to prepare for the 2023 Africa Cup of Nations.
Stunning work. It's good to see that kind of longevity, especially in the world of African football. Thank you very much, Mike, for bringing us the stories from Zambia.
Thank you very much, Africa. Good morning.
Africa, good morning indeed. And if you're hoping for an Africa good day weather-wise, you might want to start off by checking out the forecast up next. Thank you for staying with Africa Good Morning. Right now, we're crossing over to Zimbabwe to have a chat with Talent Gore as she lets us know the news on the ground. Talent, wamukase.
Tamuka kana mamukase.
Aiwa, Tamuka. Now, in one of our previous stories, in our top stories, we talked about Protest Mpiranya, who is accused as being one of the fugitives in the 1994 Rwandan genocide, one of the people who carried it out against the Tutsis. Now, in our story, we highlighted that it is alleged that he died in Harare, Zimbabwe in 2006. Now, your first story, the government yesterday dismissed the claims by some media reports alleging that Zimbabwe was harboring Protest Mpiranya. What's the truth? What are they saying?
So Zimbabwe has denied harboring the Rwandan genocide fugitive Protest Mpiranya after it emerged that he died in 2006 and was buried in the country after living here for 4 years. The 20-year manhunt for one of the world's most brutal killers came to a decisive end in an overgrown cemetery outside of Harare. But the Zimbabwean authorities are saying that they did not conceal his whereabouts. So Foreign Affairs Minister Frederick Shava yesterday said that the government of Zimbabwe wishes to clarify some recent media reports that are circulating, insinuating that the government was harboring the most wanted Rwandanese fugitive, whose remains were allegedly found in Zimbabwe under the name Dume Sambao. So the government is saying that as a law-abiding nation, Zimbabwe will never harbor criminals and welcomes finding from the DNA samples extracted from the fugitive. The minister also said that the government of Zimbabwe cooperated with UN investigators into Mpiranya's case. So they're saying that over the years, they were actually helping the UN investigators into this case. So they are dismissing any claims that are suggesting that the government knew about his whereabouts. They're saying that they did not know, the government did not know his whereabouts. So they have nothing on him. They didn't know that he was in Zimbabwe, as they were also helping the UN to find him.
Very interesting developments in the story.
Interesting indeed.
In your next story, Talent, I understand that the national beef herd increases by 10%. Can you expand more on this?
So the national beef herd increased from 5,478,000 cattle in 2020 to 5,509,000 thousand last year. The Ministry of Lands, Agriculture, Fisheries, Water and Rural Development has reported. In its second round crop and livestock assessment report, the ministry noted that cattle were getting healthier, with the average national cattle mortality rate declining from 11% in 2020 to 8.86% last year. So the government is saying that the cattle herd is actually increasing. It has increased more than in 2020, and they're saying that they are working on trying to reopen the cold storage of Zimbabwe, which was closed. I think it closed around early 2000s. That's when the cold storage of Zimbabwe closed. So they're saying that with the increase of the cattle head, they're working on trying to reopen the cold storage so that they can start again to import and to export beef, because as it stands, Zimbabwe is no longer exporting beef. So they're saying if they reopen the cold storage, they're going to be exporting beef once again.
All right, now talent in a story that has been developing basically since the death of the late President Robert Gabriel Mugabe. His family has been challenging his exhumation, alleging that perhaps there could be some traditional practices done with his remains. But this is the latest development. High Court judges of appeal on Thursday ruled in favor of the late President Robert Mugabe's children, who were challenging the exhumation of their father's remains for reburial at the National Heroes Acre. Please get into that.
So Bonatino Tenda and Bellarmine Mugabe were challenging an order for the exhumation of Mugabe's remains and confiscation of their livestock as ordered by Chief Shimba Stanley Mondoro. In the judgment, Justice Emi Tanga and Fatima Maxwell ruled against Chinoi magistrate Ruth Moyo, who had ruled Mugabe's children had no rights to appeal after a judgment handed by the traditional court against their mother, Grace. So in May 2021, Chief Shimba ordered the exhumation of Mugabe from his rural home. The court also fined Grace for breaking burial rights and defaulting. So Bona, who's the eldest daughter of former President Robert Mugabe, and her siblings were aggrieved by the ruling and took the matter to the court. During the hearing, Bona and her siblings argued that no one except them had the authority over their father's grave, warning that anyone who would tamper with it would be committing a criminal offense as outlined in the Burial Act. So the Mugabe children also insisted that the lower court must first determine if the traditional leader who ordered exhumation and reburial had the rights to do so. So the High Court judges then granted, they then ruled in of the late former president's children and said that the magistrate judge who had said that the board has to be exhumed had no right to do so, and the children have the right to bury their father where they want him to be buried, and no one can actually exhume him.
All right, thank you very much, Talent, for bringing us the stories from Zimbabwe.
You're welcome, and thank you very much for having me.
It's always good having you on Africa Good Morning. Now, in April, the Vahim market went up in flames, and this is in Somaliland. Now, $23 million has been donated to rebuild it. More on this in our economic news stories after the break. Now, heading into our economic news stories, as promised, we start off in Somaliland, where $23 million donated to rebuild collapsed Vahim market. A total of $23 million has been raised so far for the rebuilding of Vahim market in Somaliland, which was gutted by fire in early April. The president announced in his final State of the Nation address in his ending term of office. The fire destroyed properties worth up to $2 billion, according to local officials in the autonomous region of Somalia. The Somali region of Somaliland subsequently launched an international appeal to urgently deliver humanitarian and livelihood support. The committee has thus far received donations from Djibouti, Taiwan, Somalia, and the World Bank, President Muse Bihi said. While the country continues to gather support from external sources, 4 provision markets have already been set up. Bihi's address covered the economy, security, upcoming elections, droughts, and foreign policy. On elections, the president noted the licenses of the current political parties will expire in December, while the presidential election will take place in November, and the election of the new political associations is controversially expected this year. The president said the country is facing a new challenge of holding the 2 elections within a short time. He advised stakeholders to engage in the national consultation on this matter to find solution, as the 2 elections are mandatory.
In our next story, Russia suspends electricity to Finland over payment areas. Russia suspended electricity supplies to Finland overnight after its energy firm RAO Nordic threatened to cut off supplies over payment areas, an official for Finland's grid operator told AFP on Saturday. It is at 0 at the moment, and that started from midnight as planned. Timo Kaukeinen, manager of the operational planning at Fingrid, said. Now, RAO Nordic had Friday said it would suspend supplies, citing problems with payments as Helsinki prepares to announce its application for NATO membership in the wake of Moscow's invasion of Ukraine. But the shortfall was being made up by imports from Sweden. Finland imports about 10% of its power from Russia. RAO Nordic says it has not been paid for electricity since May 6th, but has not spelled out if this was linked to European sanctions against Russia. Now, Moscow's February 24th invasion has swung political and public opinion in Finland and Sweden in favor of NATO membership as a deterrent against Russian aggression. Both countries have long cooperated with the Western military alliance and are expected to be able to join it quickly. NATO chief Jens Stoltenberg has repeatedly said they would be welcomed with open arms.
Now in our next story, Europe looking to get 1 million tons of coal annually from Botswana, says President Masisi. Botswana has been inundated with inquiries to supply coal to Europe and estimates that demand from Western countries could top 1 million tons a year, President Mokgweetsi Masisi said on Tuesday, as the Ukraine war forces Europe to pivot more to Africa for energy resources. Since Russia invaded Ukraine at the end of February, Europe has sought to cut its gas imports from Russia, which many European nations previously relied on. That potentially opens the floodgates to coal supplies from Africa. We have received inquiries from Europe, and so we want to export, Masisi said in an interview with Reuters in Cape Town, where he was a key speaker at the Mining Indaba conference. Lefoko Mowaki, Minister of Mineral Resources, Green Technology and Energy Security, said in the same interview that Botswana could meet that demand, while Masisi said it wanted to do so as soon as possible. Now, Masisi said Botswana has seen demand from both governments and the private sector in Europe and estimates that demand from Europe could reach more than 50,000 tons a month. Typically, what we've been getting is 50,000 tons a month. Is that what they want to get? But we've also had others inquiring about long-term contracts. However, President Masisi emphasized that all parties were committed to reducing carbon emissions in line with the Paris Agreement on climate change.
Now, that is an interesting development.
Indeed.
Yes. So in our next story, Tunisia raises domestic electricity and gas price. Tunisia has raised the prices of domestic electricity and gas, a government official said on Friday. The latest in a series of price hikes in a country whose public finances are under increasing strain. Now, the North Africa country is seeking to reach a new loan deal with the International Monetary Fund in exchange for unpopular reforms that include lifting energy and food subsidies and freezing wages. Sami Ben Himda, a commercial director in Steg state-owned electricity and gas company, said the rise in electricity prices was 12% for those whose consumption reaches 200 kilowatt hours per month. He added that a 16% increase was made for those whose natural gas consumption exceeds 30 cubic meters per month. Tunisia will also raise the price of some foods, including milk, eggs, and poultry, the agriculture minister said earlier this week, following protests by farmers against a jump in animal feed.
All right, that brings us to the end of our economic news stories. Up next, economic indicators. Thank you for staying with Africa. Good morning. Now, as long as Glenora and I have Ari to bring us the sports, we will never talk alone. But a certain team which claims to never walk alone certainly walked their way to victory with regards to the FA Cup win in penalties yesterday. That would be Liverpool. So bring us that story and more is Ari Hochad in Cape Town.
Yes, very good morning, Ashwin Glenora. I'm happy to report on that one. It was a tough final. It was the FA Cup final on Saturday. Very prestigious. It's one of the competitions, the only competition in Britain that all the clubs can take part in, and it's a knockout competition. But that's the winners, 2022 FA Cup winners. They won 6-5 on penalties against Chelsea. And that was after normal time and extra time ended, no all draw. So it was Liverpool winning for the first time since 2006. This was their 8th title. So now we focus on the race for the English Premier League. That is finishing next week. It's just one game to go for many teams. There's still 2 games to play. Some play tomorrow night or tonight. And news from that is that it is West Ham United that held Manchester City to a 2-all draw. That was quite significant in them coming back a little bit to Liverpool. But if Liverpool win their game tonight against Southampton, Liverpool will again be just 1 point behind with 1 game to play. It's all in the hands of Manchester City for them to finish it off at home next week. And other games that I can mention is Everton that lost against Brentford. That was in the fight for relegation. They lost at home by 3-2, so it's a big loss for them, but they can still avoid relegation by winning next week as well. So games tonight that people can look forward to, important game for Liverpool against Southampton, and then also Arsenal that play against Newcastle. Important game for Arsenal because Tottenham Hotspur, they beat Burnley by 1-0. On to some cycling news. It is the Giro d'Italia that's taking place, one of the prestigious cycling tours. Joy Hindley won the 9th stage in a sprint. It was atop the summit, and then it was Romain Bardet second, and Richard Carapaz was in 3rd place. Overall classification still, it is Jean Pedro Lopez that is leading at the moment, the general classification after stage 9. It's a grueling race. It was grueling yesterday, lots of mountains and climbs, and they take a rest day today. On to some golf news. It was the AT&T Byron Nelson Classic that was played, the tournament played in the USA, and the winner in that tournament was Lee Kyung-hoon. He is from South Korea. That is Charles Schwartzel of South Africa. He came in a very respectable 8th position at 22 under par. But it's Lee Kyung-hoon from South Korea that closed with a 63 for a total tournament total of -26. That is Jordan Spieth. Jordan Spieth, he came in the 2nd place. It was a tight fight for him with the South Korean, and he was on -25. And then the 2021 Masters Golf Champion, that is Hideki Matsuyama. He is from Japan. He closed with a -10.62 round, a round of 62 for a total of -24 for 3rd position. lots of golf, good golf to look forward to this week. It is going to be the PGA, or it is the PGA, the US PGA, one of the 4 majors that will start on Thursday, and that's going to be played in Tulsa in the USA. Let's close with some tennis news. A very high-profile tennis tournament. It was the Italian Open. Both the men and the women played in that one. It's a 1,100 tournament. That's Novak Djokovic there in action on clay, and it was a great tournament for him, winning his first tournament in the year after all the challenges he had, especially in Australia. He beat Stefanos Tsitsipas of Greece in the final by 6-love and 7-6 in the second set. And then also in the women's division, it was Iga Swiatek. There's Iga Swiatek. She's really the form player in women's tennis at the moment. She won her 5th consecutive tournament that she entered into. She was injured for a few weeks before this tournament, and she beats them convincingly as well. In the final, she beat last week's winner, Ons Jabeur of Tunisia, by 6-2 and 6-2. And in the semifinals, she beat the 3rd seed Aryna Sabalenka by 6-2 and 6-1. So she's quite a distance away from the next best tennis player in the world at the moment. And also with Ash Barty retiring, seems like it will be Iga Swiatek to beat with the French Open coming up. So that's the sports news for today. Hope you have a great day, and hope, actually, that Arsenal do well tonight. And we talk again sport tomorrow. All the best. Bye-bye.
Thank you
We
very
definitely
much.
hope so.
Yeah, after last week's drumming by Tottenham, we could definitely do much better. Thank you very much, Ari, for the sports stories. After the break, your highlights.
Africa Good Morning is a current affairs program that brings you the latest from Southern Africa and beyond. News, economics, sport, weather, interviews, and so much more. For any advertising or news-related queries, contact agm@synergy.com.na. Africa Good Morning, bringing Africa to you.
Now, if you perhaps missed our top stories at the top of the hour, worry not. Here are some of the headlines. Slavery still exists in Mauritania, according to a UN envoy. Outcry as Israel police beat mourners at journalist funeral. Nigerian student beaten, burned to death over blasphemous text messages. South Africa fears new surge driven by variants. 37 candidates battle it out in Somali president poll as 2 quit race. Somaliland, $23 million donated to rebuild collapsed Vahim market. Those have been our stories.
And with that, we've come to the end of our show. Thank you for starting your week with us here at Africa Good Morning. Now, do remember that Africa Good Morning is repeated on our 1UP2 website and our DSTV channel 285 and our GoTV channel 94 between 8:30 and 9:30 a.m. every weekday. Now, if you have any comments or comments or regarding anything regarding our program, do share them with us on our Facebook and Twitter pages. And if you happen to have photos or videos of happenings in your parts of Africa, do share them with us, and we'll gladly include them in our program. My name is Glenn Rashipura.
And I am Ashwin Berry, Swera Shakanaka.